Hey, everybody, what is going on? Want to welcome you to this, Wednesday edition here of the Roto Grinders Daily Fantasy Fix podcast. I, of course, am Dan Bach. Thank you so much for the listen, the download. Again, find us on iTunes, the Roto Grinders app as well. So if you're not gotten that in the Google Store or the App Store, make sure you do so. For all your roster alerts, if you're playing daily fantasy hoops, very important this time of year. Obviously, we're going to get to NBA basketball here, but I do need to give a little bit of political commentary. Why? Well, because it's my podcast and I get to do what I want. Now, I'm going to give you fair warning if you're not into this. If you're like, I tune in for the picks and the analysis, well, just fast forward a little bit. We promise we're going to talk about this Wednesday night slate and DFS. But I also think it's important to look back at last night because I think it was legitimately one of the biggest things that I've seen in my lifetime, certainly in the world of politics, with obviously Donald Trump winning the election, going to be our next president. And for me, I just love looking, especially because like prognostication, for example, nobody in their right mind was giving him a chance to win this thing. And obviously our world is all about prognostication and looking at models and trying to predict the future, obviously instead of politics, we look at sports. But it was amazing to me how few people gave him a chance and how wrong they were about it. And for me, this is something that there's a lot of things that kind of went into this election. And I think the number one thing that really bothered me more than anything, and I'll be frank with you, I'm a Republican that voted for Gary Johnson. So I did not vote for Donald Trump in this election. But I also saw that there was just some really inappropriate, over-the-top rhetoric coming from the left, which I think really drove these Trump supporters to go to the polls more than maybe they even ever expected to. I mean, for me to see not just like an outlier, but to see like legitimately number of people drawing parallels to Donald Trump and Hitler was just ridiculous to me. And it's something that I was like, I mean, come on. Like, yes, you don't have to like him. You certainly can say that this guy is more than rough around the edges in terms of being a politician. And a lot of the stuff I think is disgusting maybe of what he said. But to draw a connection between him and Hitler and post it and say, hey, this is, this is what happened in Germany. Why can't it happen here with Donald Trump was just over the top in my eyes. And I think that led to so many people being wrong because let's face it, in my time, I've never seen so few signs out in yards for people supporting political candidates. Normally you see them on every corner. I did not see hardly any out there. And it's very simple because people were, I don't want to say ashamed of being a Trump supporter, but they certainly weren't going out there and flaunting it. And I think that's the one thing that maybe some pollsters underestimated. But the other thing we got to remember here too is this really put the system on its head. I don't think a lot of people who voted for Trump yesterday was because they wanted Donald Trump to be president more so than they wanted to shake up the political system, and they were able to do that. You factor that in because we saw it out there with Brexit. We saw it out there in Great Britain. And, when that happened, I looked at myself and said, you know what? If that can happen there, that can easily happen here. And that's pretty much what took place. And when you combine the fact that basically what Trump did this election cycle is what Obama did in the previous two, and that's reaching out to a group of people who don't normally vote. And when you factor in that he did that, and then a lot of those same people who voted for Obama in the last 8 elections, the minority vote, the young vote, those people weren't going to come out with the same passion that they did for Donald Trump, for Hillary Clinton as they did for Obama. And it was clear as day. And you basically put that along with the fact that you had Trump reaching out to a group of people who in rural areas who probably never ever voted or cared to vote, didn't think they had to vote, never really was, passionate about voting. Like, what does the blue collar worker have in common with John McCain? What does the blue collar worker have in common with Mitt Romney? Not a lot. Now, do they have a lot in common with Donald Trump? No, he's a billionaire. You know, he runs companies. He's a businessman. But what they do have in common with him is that he is a political outsider. He talks like they do. And that basically inspired them to get off their butts and do something they've never done before. And it was a perfect storm. And to see like the experts scrambling last night was entertainment if I've ever seen it. And I just really think that, you know, this is a moment in history that we're going to look back and you know, it's really now up to Trump and the Republicans to get stuff done. There is zero, and I mean zero, excuses for them to not get an agenda done. They control the House. They control the Senate. They're going to be able to appoint Supreme Court justices. So it's on them to, quote unquote, make America great again. But the whole political process was absolutely amazing for me to see. And again, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm just somebody in the outside, but I'm not going to lie. Some of the stuff that a lot of people were saying about people who were Trump supporters were disgusting in my eyes. And I think just inspired them that much more to support him. And the last thing I want to bring up is, let's go back a year and a half when he like basically declared that he was going to run for president. And this is really an amazing thing about this country. Yes, he's got a lot of money, but he had nowhere near the amount of money that Hillary Clinton had. And he shows up at a podium with a terrible trucker hat, with a slogan that was, I mean, make America great again. Like, yeah, you know, it's kind of catchy now, but at the time we're like, oh, isn't America pretty darn great as is? And he just says, I want to become president. And he freaking did it. He did it. And that's something that, you know, is just absolutely stunning to me. And here we are, and we'll see what happens from here. But let's bring on my two co-hosts for today. We've got Hoop, we've got Big T, two guys who are definitely been, I guess we could say Trump supporters, but two guys who were very much believing what we saw happen last night was going to happen. And Hoop, give me your thoughts real quick. I want to get your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, like you said, yeah, I kind of been on the whole Trump train from the beginning. I mean, he found a message that resonated with a huge portion of this country. Whether you agree with it or not, his main message resonated with just a large group of this country. You take away some of the controversial stuff. Obviously, he said some very controversial things and a lot of things that he probably regrets. You take away a lot of that crap, and I think most of the country agrees with what he says. Most of the country does think the political system is completely corrupt. Most people do believe that the government is not necessarily working for them and working for their own self-interest. And he exposed that message. And, you know, you touched on the topic of it being a perfect storm, and it really was. And, you know, we saw in this election, the opponents are really what energized the other person's base, you know, and unfortunately for Hillary Clinton, her base just wasn't energized enough, and you're going to see it in the numbers here. And you know, I'm sure they're going to dig much deeper and find out what really happened. But as it looks right now, you know, her people didn't come out and vote for her, and you know, that's the whole reason. You know, regardless of how I feel about Trump, obviously, like I said, I am a supporter. You know, you see the energy behind him, and I just said it from the beginning. It's like the enthusiasm is definitely behind him, and it's been throughout the entire process, the primaries, the general election. We saw it. People that were going to vote for him were very passionate, excited, and enthused. People that were going to vote for Hillary Clinton, for the most part, didn't have those same feelings, and that's exactly what happened with the vote. Her people didn't get out there. Trump's people were energized, and what you saw was this massive turnout. What it looks like, you know, I'm not a political analyst by any means, but what it looks like is these counties, the rural counties, came out in just massive numbers. And the Trump people were saying all along, you know, we have this vote, we have this 5% vote that, you know, these polls aren't picking up. And it turned out to be true. The numbers are just massive in his favor. And, you really have to wonder moving forward. I mean, some of these pollsters, so far off. Like,
you almost have to wonder, though, are we ever going to see an election like this again, though? Because I don't know if we're going to see somebody be able to tap into the same group that Trump did he did this year. Because I don't think anybody's ever been like he's been as a candidate.
Yeah, but it's just crazy. Yeah, and I agree. This is such a unique situation, but to see these polls so far off in like Pennsylvania, I honestly don't think Donald Trump himself thought he had a chance to win the state of Pennsylvania. I really don't believe deep down that he thought he could win Pennsylvania. Polls had him down like 10, 11 points, even 12. She's a massive betting favorite to win Pennsylvania. And he went in there and won Pennsylvania, which is just unheard of. And that message, the trade message, they bring our jobs back, just really resonated with so many people. I think a lot of union guys that would typically just go ahead and vote Democrat came out and supported Trump in the hope that, he does keep the jobs here, keeps the manufacturing jobs here, bring some of those jobs back. But just a truly, truly fascinating event. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah, no question. And I do want to make something crystal clear, too, to people is that, there's a lot of people who now are like, and I still see it this morning, people are like, oh, I'm worried about myself and my kids' future. Same stuff was said 8 years ago by the people on the right about Obama. I mean, people in my family said the same thing. Oh, no, socialism, it's the end of the world. What are we going to do? I'm going to lose all this money. Guess what? We're fine. We're fine. Okay? I can almost guarantee you that a lot of the rhetoric that you heard from Trump, and I got to admit, the opening speech that he gave or the acceptance speech that he gave last night was a very different tone than anything that he's really at any other time he's spoken. And it almost makes you wonder, is the Trump that we saw to win the election going to be the same Trump that we see in office? And honestly, I don't know, to be honest with you, because let's face it, if you're asking me 4 years from now if Donald Trump is going to either run for president or be president, I would probably say no to almost both of those things. It would not surprise me one bit for him to just say, 4 years, I'm in, I'm done, gave it a run, tried my best at it, not my cup of tea. But it'll be interesting to see. Now, T, you're somebody who was certainly, again, a Trump, backer. Give me your take on what took place last night.
I mean, I'm a perfect example, too. Like, I've never been into politics my entire life. Like, I've never voted. I've never turned on CNN. I mean, I'll take it that far. Like, I've never cared or been involved in it. But just something about Trump. Like, I just kind of got along with what he was saying, and I just got on board. And then the more people started calling me stupid, and I mean, everybody I talked to was saying, why would you vote for him? If you do this, then you're that. If you're just so many like stereotypes towards me just for liking the guy and wanting some change and wanting different stuff. And I mean, I really liked what he was saying, and it was crazy to see all the voters come out and get him to where he had a chance to win. I mean, think about, like you said, over a year ago, like this guy came out of nowhere. Like everyone knows who the Donald is, but like no one thought he was going to, they were making fun of him. Like they showed some clips last night, like of CNN or whatever, Fox News or any of those channels. Like when they announced it, people were literally laughing, like openly laughing at the guy. Like, oh, he's running for president. He's going to win. Ha, 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 ha. And then, I mean, the guy won. No matter what you think, like you guys said again, I mean, I'm not going to gloat or rub it in on here. I mean, I did enough of that on Twitter last night. But, I mean, you just have to respect what the guy did. I mean, the guy won the president of the United States out of nowhere. Like, it's just crazy to think that
no money, really. I mean, yes, he's a billionaire, but he had nowhere near the amount of money that Hillary Clinton had.
He didn't even run ads.
Like, no,
it's mind-boggling. And then for people to say like you're dumb for voting it, like he won in a landslide almost last night. I mean, I didn't look at the numbers. Obviously, we just woke up after being up late last night, but when we went to bed, it looked like he was going to end up with way more electorals than he even needed. So it's just insane to me. I mean, like Hoop said, Hoop called it weeks ago. Like, he said he would win Michigan, and I kind of thought Michigan would be close, but he ended up winning Michigan, which is just nuts, and Wisconsin and all these states. Like, I just think people really, the message really resonated with them, and it's just crazy. Like you said, I think it was one of the biggest nights in our history, no matter what side you're on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think his message, and I think even more so than the message, was the fact that he wasn't a politician. Because you got to remember this. Any politician, real, true politician, who said and did the things that Trump did over the last 6 months, they would have been dead in the water literally hours after they said or did them. But for Trump, it didn't matter. Why? Because nobody looked at him as a politician. People weren't voting for him. They were voting for him because he wasn't squeaky clean.
Think of that Access Hollywood video. What if that came out against some other politician?
Yeah. And it was, and I'm not gonna lie though. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, politically that kind of went on. Like the whole thing. I don't care what anybody says. The FBI stuff coming out 2 weeks before the election, absolutely 100% had an impact. I don't know if it swung enough for it to decide who was our president, but it absolutely had an impact on this, and that's something that it was just crazy. The whole thing was just batshit crazy. And
go ahead. The last 3 weeks, I mean, that Access Hollywood tape that comes out, I mean, you have to assume, I was diehard. I thought he was going to win. I said it long ago. That Access Hollywood tape comes out, then you're immediately thinking, wow, there is no chance. At that point, when that comes out, how do you overcome this? And I mean, people were willing to put all the BS aside and literally listen to his message. And he hit on the key words consistently, the corrupt media, crooked Hillary, the jobs leaving. I mean, when it's all said and done, he's stuck on those messages that just resonated so closely with a lot of people. And the reason, I talked to Tony, and he had mentioned how I said he would win Michigan. I said it all along because, there's a lot of auto workers here, and that talk about, Ford leaving, that's big for those people. And, union guys here always just, go ahead and jam in Democrats. And that message really stuck with a decent portion. You have to, when you look at the numbers, I mean, it didn't take a large group of those guys leaving and voting for Trump. It took a small group, and I think they did. I know a lot of people personally. I have friends, family that are a part of the auto union, and they always vote Democrat. This time, they voted Trump, and it stuck. That message stuck about the jobs leaving, the corrupt government. It just stuck with those people, and he hit on the right topics. And now, like you said, he has everything now. I mean, they have the presidency, the House, the Senate. So, as a Trump supporter, it's on him now. I mean, he has no reason to not get this stuff done. So I hope everyone out there is willing. It's a super divided country. In this country, so divided. I hope everyone is willing to come together, give him a chance, because I think the message and I think the message that he's talking about in his agenda could really help a lot of people in this country. So hopefully everyone get together, get on the same page, and make this work, and kind of all unite as one.
Yeah, and man, talk about just crazy, and maybe one of the biggest political, ramifications, I guess we could say, of him winning is the Supreme Court. And I'm not going to lie, even as a Republican, I think what Congress did was BS, and basically saying, you can put somebody forth and we're not even going to listen to them. We're going to leave it up to the next president. And honestly, and again, this is getting really political here, boys and girls. We'll get to fantasy in a moment. I actually thought that that Garland that Obama put up was about as centrist of a judge as you were conceivably going to find. And very simply, the Republicans put it out there and said, well, we're going to bet on Trump here to win. Because I guarantee you this much, if Hillary wins, very simply, you're probably getting a much more liberal judge than you got there, and Trump came through, and this is interesting to see how this plays, because again, a lot of the people on the right, a lot of the big, a lot of the big conservatives out there, they don't see eye to eye with Donald Trump at all. And it's going to be an absolute fascinating time here in this country to see how the political world, how shaken up does it really get? Does Trump become a politician now? Because he clearly wasn't, and that's what got him in office, Hoop. But I would love it. I would simply love it if this guy would say, you know what? I don't care about Republicans. I don't care about Democrats. I'm willing to mix up my cabinet and do things differently than anybody has ever done in the last 25 years as president. I think that's the legacy that he can build, rather than just saying, hey, I'm gonna, do everything like we normally do, presidential wise, in terms of bring in my Republicans and go down party lines. And you know what? Do you? That's what got you there.
No, I think that's something that's a real possibility, and I hope that is the case, to be honest with you. And you look at one of his main messages throughout the election process, rework these trade deals, get rid of the free trade, kind of not against free trade, but more smart trade. And that kind of goes directly against the Republican and conservative take on that. So that will be one thing that's very interesting to see how far he actually takes that, because that's more of a Democrat approach opposed to Republican. So that's the one thing I think will be super interesting moving forward.
All right, that's going to do it for our politics rant here on the podcast. Again, you know what? We don't get. It's one of the moments in history that we will that's going to live on forever. Guarantee you, it will be talked about for many of lifetimes beyond our own. So interesting stuff. All right, let's get some fantasy hoops, though, because that's why people really download us and listen to us. And Tony, we were talking a little bit before the show. Last night, a quick look back. I don't know about you, but my teams, I really regret all this news on Tyson Chandler coming out and Marquez Chris getting to start, because I'm pretty sure that my teams would have been much, much better if I didn't make those edits. What happened in that game last night with Phoenix? All that value that looked like was sitting there didn't do squadoosh for us.
Yeah, it was an interesting game all the way around, and some of the key guys from Phoenix laid eggs, and guys like Bledsoe that have struggled went off, and it was just a different game compared to what we're used to in NBA, where things go along with the rhythm a lot. So it was different. I mean, Chris still got like 15 or 16, didn't he, on DraftKings? Yeah.
I mean, at 3K on DraftKings, it didn't kill you, but
I'm pretty sure him and Lynn were on my best team, so I don't know.
Len's minutes were not what we expected him. And the interesting thing about it is these guys play again tonight against Detroit here at home. This is interesting, too. I think that game last night was in Portland. Now they got to fly back down to Phoenix for the back end of a back-to-back. I don't know what the deal is with Tyson Chandler, if he's going to play or not. But we'll get to the positional kind of analysis, Hoop. But what's your takeoff on this? If Chandler's out, do we fire up Len again? I mean, the salary certainly isn't going to go up from one day to the other. Yeah,
no, I mean, I liked him yesterday. I projected him for way more minutes. I thought he was a safe bet to hit 25, and if he hits 25 minutes, he's a really solid play, but the minutes just weren't fully there yesterday. So, I don't know. I'm definitely just going to come down to roster construction. I will admit this is kind of a first look for myself, so it's pretty raw information. So, yeah, we just have to see. I wish the minutes were there last night. If they were, as a guy we can jam in. Now there's a little bit of risk. In fact, he only played like 18 minutes.
All right, let's get to some positional analysis here, guys. We'll start at point guard tonight. And, again, I'm pretty much like to fire up the RG projections. It's actually not a bad starting point for us in terms of our analysis on the day. Again, lots of news will change or will happen, and will probably change some of our outlook on this slate. But the one thing I did notice, not a lot of salary changes. Steph Curry is still sitting at 8-9 here, T. And I know you're not a Steph Curry guy, but even you can appreciate 13 Trays the other day, and it's only fitting that he holds that record. Like, he should just hold every three-point shot record in the history of the NBA, and I'm glad he got that one. That was an unbelievable performance, but his salary is under $9K still, and he gets a date versus JJ Barea. That's a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I'm not a Steph guy by any means, but I do appreciate him as the best shooter of all time and probably the best just skilled offensive guy of all time. So, I mean, he definitely should have the record, 13 threes. And the crazy part was he was 13 for 17. A lot of times when these guys get these huge number of threes, they're like J.R. Smith that one game was like 12 for like 30 or something crazy. So, like, the 13 threes is the most impressive part to me is he only shot 17 of them. Like, that's just incredible. But, yeah, I mean, I've rostered Steph a ton this year. He's under 9K. He's just too good of a value. I mean, who would have thought you would ever get him for $2,600 cheaper than Russell Westbrook? I mean, obviously Westbrook does more, and he's a better, like, fantasy player right now. But $2,600 is a pretty significant discount.
Yeah, and I think that we're finally going to see, and again, we've seen a lot of recency bias in terms of tournament ownership hoop this year, and I think we're going to see it again tonight because there's no doubt, Russell Westbrook has been a disappointment the last 3 or 4 games for the salary that he has up there. Now, to be fair, last game he didn't play the entire fourth quarter, so those numbers are obviously going to be bad. But, even this slate isn't too much dissimilar to the last one in terms of a lot of the studs that we have out there. And Curry, especially on FanDuel, was like 14% owned, I believe it was, or in that range, to Westbrook, who was still like mid-30s in like large field GPPs, and for cash, it probably wasn't even close. I think that swings here today. I think Curry's probably back to being the chalk after the game last night. I love, trying to find those spots where recency bias rears its head and then goes the other way. But, against Dallas, there is some blowout potential here, that this also feels like a game that, that Steph Curry could easily score another 35 real life points.
Yeah, he'll be massively owned today because of that price tag and performance. Really good match. Everything's just in his favor here, so he'll be really, really highly owned. But Russell Westbrook, still at 11.5, I don't care. That's just too cheap. The last 3 games, all blowouts, every single game. Golden State, they got blown out. Minnesota, they handed out a blowout, and the same for Miami. He hasn't played more than 30 minutes in 3 straight games.
He's literally not played 1 minute in the fourth quarter, 3 straight games. So you got a great value spot tonight.
And he'll be under-owned. He'll be under-owned for sure.
Yeah, people are going to get off him, definitely because of the fact that, the production hasn't been there, and it's simply because of 3 straight blowouts. So him at 11.5, I have trouble passing up on that.
And he gets Toronto. That's going to be a competitive game, not going to be a blowout. Now, Lowry, a good defender, but I really don't worry so much about that with a guy like Westbrook. He's just, an elite offensive talent. I think we make a pretty good case there. Now, what do we think the line in total is going to be in that Golden State Dallas game, Tony? I don't have one right here, but if we were playing odds maker, home game, back end of the back-to-back for Dallas, Golden State, won against New Orleans, but didn't do it pretty. What do you think?
Golden State was just minus 16 versus New Orleans, so they're going to be minus 13, 14 range.
I think so, too.
I think it'd be higher. I think like 17.
You think higher than versus New Orleans? Yeah, I mean, it probably will be. And then so you're probably
they've been playing so well lately. Dallas sucks back to back. I think
it's definitely a blowout spot. You can say that much.
Yeah.
Now, what about JJ Barea though at 5.7? Do we kind of put the blowout risk aside for him here, T? I mean, he did it again last night. Feels like 30 fantasy points is what we're going to get from him as a starter. And again, Darren Williams probably going to be out. Dirk doesn't look like he's going to play. So we're going to get a lot of JJ Barea here tonight.
Yeah, and speaking of recency bias too, I think Curry tonight, the other Curry actually, after his huge game last night, he's still min price obviously because they haven't bumped it from last night, and just a blowout spot is perfect for him against his brother. I mean, I don't know how you don't play Seth Curry tonight. It's a different
brother
spot,
versus brother narrative. I think that's shooting guard, but I like that. That's pretty good. All right, let's look at some other options for us here. Lowry at 7.6 against Westbrook. I love pairing 2 point guards together, and hopefully you get that back and forth. I feel like Westbrook and Lowry is not a bad way to go, especially in tournaments tonight, Hoop. And I don't mind Lowry alone in cash at that price. That's really good.
And I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine with Lowry there. I mean, obviously, what Russell Westbrook's doing on offense, or trying to do on offense, is going to go ahead and make his defense take a step back. So I like that, especially in tournaments. That's the one position where you legitimately do frequently see guys going like back and forth at each other. And what Westbrook's going to get his, Lowry is also going to try to get his. So I like that call a lot in tourneys.
What do you think of Schroeder here, Tony, at 6K tonight? 35, 34 fantasy points the last two games against Cleveland and Houston, and gets Rondo tonight in the Bulls.
Yeah, I feel like he's still too cheap. I mean, I've been using him a bunch lately. He just looks good. I mean, the first couple games was a little rough, but I think I heard you say it yesterday or somebody, like, he's getting used to playing against the other ones, and he's kind of getting used to just starting in that role in the league. So it looks like he's finally got his feet under him. I mean, he's going to be a 7K to 8K type player, I think, eventually. So to get him for 6K is definitely a discount. Even though it's a back-to-back versus Chicago, it should be a good matchup. I think he's safe for cash games for sure.
Just some injury notes here. Looks like Tony Parker may return today at point guard. Also keep our eye on George Hill with Utah. Not a big Shelvin Mack guy here on this larger slate. Don't think we need to really go there. Okay, let's move to shooting guard here and see what we have stand out for us. One guy who I'm really impressed with, how about this Sean Kilpatrick guy, Hoop? I mean, he did it again last night. The guy is playing crunch time minutes. I mean, wasn't a huge fantasy day yesterday. I think he was around, let's see.
20.
I got 20, but man, I really felt like he had a better game than that, because every time I watched it, I turned it on, he was out there making plays, and he's kind of interesting today. 4.9 against the Knicks, I think, is a value option.
Yeah, I'm with you. I played him last night, and I was kind of paying attention to the game on my phone a little bit. Like, man, I thought he really did better. And then I look at the box score, it's 6 turnovers.
That'll kill you.
That's what 6 turnovers will do. Takes a good performance and brings you way back down. But that performance still doesn't kill you at his price. And yeah, he's kind of the guy out there. Comes off the bench, running that second unit for the most part, and just too cheap, I think, for this role right now on the squad.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement there. The price is catching up at 4.9. Can go up 1,000 more, or even 400 more, and get a Rodney Hood against Charlotte. You can get, Oladipo finally played well. I don't really love him today against Toronto. But Zach LaVine, what's your take up on him, Tony? That's a team that's got a lot of guys who can put up fantasy points, and kind of got back going a little bit on offense last game. Jacked up 16 shots. I really like LaVine's game. Not a great fantasy night with only 19 fantasy points, but, man, he plays so many minutes out there for that team.
I just have a hard time with LaVine. I was on him last year a ton, but this year I've just had a hard time because I feel like there's so many guaranteed lock values at the position that it's just tough for me to play an unknown like LaVine. I mean, even Klay Thompson at 59, like, he's just too cheap. He's playing terrible. But he's going to find his way. He made some shots last game. Like, even in a blowout, I feel like he gets minutes. I mean, you got Fournier, you got Beal, you got Hood, you got Kilpatrick. I mean, there's just so many lock values that I just have a hard time playing LaVine personally.
Devin Booker had a interesting game last night. I believe he continued to shoot the ball obviously a lot, but, the two previous games he went ham. Yesterday, he scored 23 points, nearly gave us the old blue light special, which is less fantasy points than real life points, but finished on the
no assist. Like, how do you do that in 31 minutes?
I don't know. Gave you a steal at least, but it was encouraging to still see him jack up 18 shots, not quite to the caliber of the 20 we saw before. But at 6,700, he still feels a little bit underpriced for me. But I think I think Tony laid it out well here, Hoop, that, like, shooting guard, there's going to be a lot of diversity in terms of who we want to play today. Like, I don't think we're going to have mega chalk necessarily here. Even James Harden against San Antonio mean, Harden is Harden, but at 11-1 against the Spurs, that hasn't worked out too well for a lot of high-priced guys so far this year.
That's literally like not to interrupt you, Hoop, but that's like the best tournament play I've seen in a long time. Harden, like no one's going to have him tonight, and the Spurs have notoriously struggled with guards like Harden. Like Westbrook's always killed them. Like guys that can slash in there and really get by those guards is a huge advantage, and they have no rim protection anymore. So I love Harden in tournaments. I would never use him in cash games because of all that guaranteed value, but Harden's a great tournament play tonight in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree. No one's going to play him, and that's one of my favorite spots in tournaments is just going to stars that are in tough spots. And this is a spot no one's going to be on Harden. And see it so many times, and these guys are just so good. I mean, their offensive skills overcome even the toughest of defenses at times. So I like that call there. But I think Dan kind of nailed it in the fact that there's like decent value. It's going to be pretty spread out in terms of ownership because there's like some good value here, but nothing like really stands out like I have to play this guy as it stands right now. I'll just go over some of the names. You touched on Clay. I agree with that. Tony, like Bradley Beal's playing really well. It's a tougher matchup against Boston, but he's 5.6K. That's too cheap. Even Oladipo at 5.3K. Hood, Kilpatrick. Wesley Matthews just playing a ton of minutes right now. Obviously, there's a lot of blowout potential there, but he's only 4.6K. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at 4.4. Even coming down a little bit lower, like Courtney Lee, 3.9K. If Korver's out, you can take a chance on maybe even Tim Hardaway. He sucked last night, but played 30 minutes in a tough matchup. So there's a lot of different ways to go here. So I think it'll be spread out, and I think people will look to save here.
All right, let's get to the small forward position. And again, we've got I think the guy tonight you're going to want to roster is Kawhi Leonard, obviously against Houston, and a fast-paced, game for him. And he has been pretty steady. Last game against the Clippers, didn't play well. But before then, you're looking at 51, 43, 38, 33, 50, 53. I mean, he has been super consistent, and you get him for about 1,000 less than, say, Durant, who's, great player today, but also in a very blowout potential matchup against Dallas. For me, looks like the chalk for me is going to be Leonard at small forward. What do you think, Hoop?
Yeah, I mean, if you're spending, I like spending on him more than anyone else. Just a phenomenal spot here, at home against Houston. I think even if this game does blow out, I haven't seen the spread on this. Maybe, what is it, 7 or 8? I guess there's not a super high chance for a blowout, but he's going to get his. And 8.8K, it's up there, but I mean, he's a guy that literally can contribute all across the board. He does it all the time. Coming off somewhat of a stinker, they got blown out against the Clippers last time out, but I like him a lot tonight.
The other chalky play, Harrison Barnes. T, I know you love Harrison Barnes. I'm still not a fan. I know he's been good the last 2 weeks.
What don't you like about him?
I just don't think he's a good player. I think he's basic. Why? I just don't think he is.
He buckled in the finals under the biggest pressure of all time.
I mean, he's going to put up stats because of opportunity, but as soon as other people come back, he's going to go back to being Harrison Barnes, who gives you 15 points,
he's
3 rebounds, and 2 assists.
He's the best player on the Mavericks. What does it matter who comes back?
Well, you don't think that Darren Williams and Nowitzki are going to take his shots?
I mean, they're going to eat into his workload a little bit, but, I mean, you're the guy that hates old men. Those guys can't even walk. How many games are they going to play?
Well, Harrison Barnes might be young, but he feels like a old young guy because he doesn't feel like uber athletic. Like, I mean, do you like him better as a player? Who would you rather have, Harrison Barnes or Andrew Wiggins?
I really seriously look at them really similarly. I mean, Wiggins is obviously way better on defense, but, I mean, I think they're similar. I don't know who I would take, to be honest. I mean, I guess I would take Wiggins probably, but I think it's way closer than you think it is.
I guess. Let me kind of be the tiebreaker here because I think both your points don't really matter. He's 5.7. He's 5.7K. Their team is not healthy right now. He's playing a crap ton of minutes.
And this is just a great revenge spot in general. Like, he hates Golden State.
Oh, yeah, he's too cheap. I mean, whether you like him, Dan doesn't like him, Tony does like him. That doesn't matter. He's 5.7.
We want the tiebreaker, though.
Yeah.
Huh?
We want a tiebreaker, though, Hoop.
Yeah, like, do you like him, Hoop? Like, we all agree. Like, even if I don't like him, like, he's like a plug and play today. Like, there's no doubt. But do you like him as a basketball player? Do you think he's good?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. I tried to stay down the middle here, but I gotta agree with Tony. Actually, I do like him, and I think I kind of go back to what I said before. I mean, they gave him this money. Regardless of who comes back, he's gonna play these minutes, and they're gonna get him his shots. I just really believe it. And yeah,
Alan Crabb got money too. Just don't forget about that.
That's Tony's boy.
Do you know, how old do you think Harrison Barnes is, by the way?
He's young. He's a young kid.
Exactly. He's still so young. Like, how I'm baffled that why you don't think he's good.
Well, we'll see. I mean, he's a good play tonight. That's for sure. No doubt.
You think Golden State wishes they could give Durant back for all 9 of their role guys that are all good?
I think they're going to be just fine. I think they're going to be just fine come playoff time. I'm not worried about that.
I'm gonna go ahead and agree with Dan on this side now because they're not going to give anything back.
Get some big bucks then again this year. Well, they'll be out for the taking.
I mean, you seriously think like they have buyer's remorse on getting Durant and not giving money to Harrison Barnes? I mean, Harrison Barnes, you say he's mad at Golden State, but like he wasn't going to get that kind of money from them.
No, exactly.
So like he's fine. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like he was a given, but he still has to have his feeling hurt that he had to leave. But
check your bank account, and then your feelings won't be.
I'm not saying he's sad in life. Like obviously he's happy in life. I mean, the guy is filthy rich now.
There's no chance. There's no chance they're giving Durant back for those bench guys, Tony.
No, well they probably wouldn't. The guys I think that regret it the most are Curry and Klay Thompson. I think it really hit them like, whoa, this guy's actually way better than us, and now we're the second and third best instead of like the Splash Brothers type thing.
Yeah, but we saw Curry. It doesn't take long for him to get back into FU mode. I mean, that was.
I mean, I want those DB and Hoop box. They were sweet last year, Hoop. I just hope you stay on the wagon.
They'll be available for your taking. Don't you worry.
I can't wait.
But he's a great play. If you're playing on FanDuel today, 5.7, way too cheap over there. He's a bit more on DraftKings. I think he's actually 1,200 more over on DraftKings. So they at least make you think a little bit about it. But
the nice thing was, though, with the bump on DraftKings, that was one reason. He was like my key guy on DraftKings last night because I know how people think that play on both sites. And when they see him way more on DraftKings, they're like, I'll just play him on FanDuel. And that's kind of my hedge for the night. So then he was 12% owned in these things on DraftKings. It's like, that's crazy at a small forward. Like, he's still priced where he should be, and he's in a great spot versus the Lakers yesterday. So I just didn't understand it.
Let's see. I don't think, Wiggins 5.9 back cheap again against Orlando. Man, Orlando, jeez, what a terrible team. God, they are so bad.
That's what happens when you make like 9 straight terrible trades.
Yeah. What about Paul George against Philly? Philadelphia obviously not a good team, but either is Indianapolis, and they've been playing at a crazy pace this year. 209 total in this one. I don't have a spread right now in front of me, but Philly seems a little bit improved. Indiana feels worse. This could be competitive enough, and George is. He's got 50 fantasy point upside at 8,200.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in NBA, I'm so much of like I watch the games and I look at the game logs and just looking at him, his last 4 out of his last 5 games have just been train wrecks. So yeah. I just have a hard time paying that kind of price for a guy that has been that bad, honestly, in 4 out of 5 games. And Indiana in general has just looked terrible, completely awful. So I just can't pay that. I mean, you can pay $600 more for Kawhi, or you can pay less and get Melo in a great spot. So,
I mean, their roster build might be worse than the Magic. To me, it just makes no sense. I mean, they literally have 5 guys that need the ball. I mean, every guy in that offense is a guy that demands the ball, needs the shots.
And they got way worse on defense and
way worse.
Just doesn't. I don't know, that type of build just doesn't win. So yeah, they took a step back, big time step back.
Melo, I'm glad you brought him up. He's gotten back to the 40 fantasy points we've come to expect in the last 2, and one of those came against Utah, pretty good defensive team. Gets Brooklyn tonight. Obviously, stellar play at 7,500. I mean, really cheap there.
And you actually quietly got, I think, the highest total of the night, sitting at 214. It opened at 211. It's up to 214. So this is a good spot for some. Brooklyn all year has had super high totals. So it's an interesting spot to look at because I guarantee Brooklyn, New York, isn't going to be crazy, crazy high owned or anything. So it's an interesting spot for tournament. It's like a stack type thing.
All right, let's get to power forward here tonight. Hoop, let's see. On the high end, we got Blake Griffin, who was having an awesome game before he sat in that fourth quarter. Gets Portland tonight on a back end of a back-to-back. 8,500, pretty pricey. I don't know if it's going to fit the build today, if you're obviously going to be able to get or want to use a guy like Russell Westbrook or James Harden. But 8,500, I don't like Blake at 9K. I don't mind him in the 8K range. This matchup, with Aminu potentially out, he could feast a little bit against that front court.
I love him again tonight. I mean, you look at the game log, same situation with Westbrook, 2 blowout games, and he literally in these last 2 games would have gone well over 50 fantasy points without the blowout. I mean, he was dominating these past 2 games and just complete blowouts and plays limited minutes. So 8.5K for me, way too cheap on Blake.
And I'm not seeing a lot of big value here at power forward. Here, Tony. By the way, one small forward I forgot to mention, I don't hate Mo Harkless today, too. He's actually been really good the last couple games. So if you need like a 4K, punt.
What happened to Aminu last night? He got hurt.
I think Aminu's doubtful, so that's a boost for him, too. So I like that call even more.
Yeah. And, I don't know who would move into that starting lineup, are we thinking, if Aminu would be out? Is there an obvious name that jumps in?
I mean, I think Mo Harkless gets the biggest boost from it. I don't know who moves into the lineup.
I mean, Crabbe's minutes will be super secure, but he hasn't been doing much with those minutes, I think.
I mean, you got Vonleh, Myers Leonard. I mean, maybe if anything, they might actually keep Mason Plumlee on the freaking court a little bit more, rather than dumping him for 20 minutes a game. I don't know why they do that. But power forward, there's not a lot of value here. I'm not seeing. I mean, Enes Kanter against Toronto. We saw him last game. I can't peg Kanter at all. Is this a Kanter game or is this not?
Game flow dependent or independent, I should say. Like when they blow teams out, he's going to go just insane. Like he's the best garbage time player in the world.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to play much last game, and he freaking killed it. Who else are you looking at power forward here tonight, T?
Just one more point about Blake Griffin, too. Like, the Clippers were my team to go to the finals, and they've just looked incredible. Like, look at their game logs. I mean, they beat Detroit by 20 or 30, the Spurs by 20 or 30, killed Memphis. Every game they've won has been a blowout, and they're 6-1. Like, Blake Griffin's been unbelievable. The Hoopster was going to win that big tournament the other day until he didn't play in the fourth quarter, so he kind of screwed the Hoopster only playing 29 minutes.
Yeah, he needed like 10 points and out of one something. Didn't work out though.
Hey, there was about a dozen players who didn't play the fourth quarter
that night. In all fairness, like everyone did. But it hurt more because it was the last game of the night, so it was more obvious.
I didn't get it done, so I had to call Big T for a loan.
A few potential value spots. Trevor Booker over 30 in each of the last 2. Minutes aren't great for him, 27, 28, 29. He did get into some foul trouble yesterday, but like Tony said, they're playing at a fast pace there and pretty high total with that Brooklyn team. What do we do with Marcus Chris if he draws a start again? 3,500 against Detroit. I mean, stone minimum. Hoop, you didn't watch much basketball yesterday. I don't know if T, did you watch that game? I mean, what do we do with this guy? I mean, he got in foul trouble. I'll give him that much. But he's so cheap today. I mean, he can probably get you to Harden and Westbrook if you want that today.
If he's announced as a starter again, I mean, he's 3,500 at a relatively weak position just from the looks of it. So I have no problem going back to him at mid-price if he starts.
Yeah, he got 13 fantasy points. At 3.5K, you're looking for 17 to 18. So, you just have to make up like 5 points somewhere if you're trying to get the the value type lineup in there. So, 12.8 is not killer at the min. So, and I think that was pretty close to like his floor type performance. So I think we can go back.
Yeah, I'm interested, but the one thing that worries me a little bit is that Phoenix was competitive in that game yesterday. They that's a tough place to play up there in Portland, and that first unit did not really play that well, especially the bigs. And you almost wonder if the coach will be willing to kind of go back again heavy in that second unit, considering how well they played there. But Chris had an excuse at least. He did get in foul trouble right off the bat. And I think that kind of caused his minutes to probably fall to 20, where normally I think he's probably going to see 25. 7 shot attempts, 4 boards. It's not horrible. I mean, if you get up to 10 shot attempts, 6 rebounds, you're pretty much in that range. I mean, I don't think he's going to give us 30 or anything like that, but if he can get us 25, that can be huge for a tournament. I don't know if I want to go there in cash today. I always get nervous with these 3K crappers for cash. They seem to screw me more times than they do come through. So,
yeah, I mean, another guy that I like at power forward that's cheap is this Lure. I've played him all year, and he just keeps hitting value. I mean, he doesn't start, which always gets you a little worried, but he's playing 28 minutes a night, which is basically starter minutes, a little less than starter minutes, but right there on the verge of it. And, I mean, you want to talk about a consistent box score, like he's been right there around value pretty much every game. So I love him at a weak power forward position.
All right, let's get to center and wrap this podcast up for today. And, we've got Karl Anthony Towns, who you brought up a good point, T, in the pre-show that you're like, what happened with Towns? He had like 35 at halftime and then didn't do hardly anything for a while. I think there was some foul trouble there. And
he had 5. I got it up now.
Yeah, he got into some foul trouble, and that obviously you hate to see. That was a pretty good matchup, but Orlando here today, I don't think it's quite as good because, I mean, Lopez and Trevor Booker, at 6'8" or whatever, 6'7", like Towns just, I mean, I don't know if you watched that game, but he had some unbelievable dunks in that one, just literally, facializing guys right there at the rim. And, Vucevic is not a good defender at all, but at least he has some size to him. But at 8'7", I might be willing to go back there. He's just got so much upside, and we're seeing that scoring, be pretty solid for Towns.
Yeah, I like Towns a lot. This is like you said, Vucevic does have some size, but Towns is a lot better, and he's been close to some big performances. I mean, it's another situation where looking at the box scores can be kind of deceiving. The OKC game, he was dominating. They got blown out, and he didn't get his full complement of minutes. Played 31 minutes in that game. Plays 37, 38. He has a monster performance. Last night, like we said, on the path of having a monster performance, and then fell into foul trouble. So he could legitimately have like 3 straight monster performances without some of these odd circumstances. So 8.7, I think, might be a little bit too cheap for him.
Who else stands out to you? T? Give me some centers that you like.
I mean, just a couple cheap guys. Noah sticks off the page at me. I don't like old guys, kind of like you, but he's only 4,400 against a Nets team in that high total we talked about earlier, where it's a sneaky high total. So 4,400 for Noah seems like the best value to me. Also in that same range, another guy that I don't really like, but in that same revenge type spot, Bogut versus the Warriors. I'm sure they'll give him some minutes. And even though it's a back-to-back, just because it's against Golden State, I expect him to be pretty good tonight.
Yeah, Hoop, what do you think? Man, they just keep dropping that price on DeAndre Jordan down to 6,700 tonight against Portland. Interesting, I think.
Yeah, DeAndre, I mean, there's actually a ton of value at this position just going through it now. You said DeAndre Jordan, that's as cheap as he's probably been in about 2 years. I can't remember a point last season where he's cheaper than that. There's a ton here. Gortat, Plumlee, Steven Adams, Len, if Chandler's out, come down even a little bit more, like Tyler Zeller, if Horford's out. Just a
even
lot.
Powell is 5.8. Gosh, remember? I mean, he sucks this year, but it's still against Houston. I mean, this is still going to be a highly scored or a highly, a high total game, and he's been bad. But man, 5.8 for him.
Loaded position, really loaded position. Did I mention Adams? Adams 5.1K. That's way too cheap as well.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough. Anybody who you got to I mean, I can't. I mean, Noah, at least he's got 3 days off of rest. I'll give you that one, T. So maybe his old legs can handle it a little bit better. But what stands out for you? Give me the.
I mean, for me right now, I mean, like you guys said earlier, I haven't looked a ton at it just because we just woke up before this. But for me, DeAndre Jordan, they haven't played a ton of minutes in the fourth, so his box scores look awful, which has brought his price down. I just think he's probably too cheap now. I mean, 6,700. if he plays his full complement of minutes, he's going to hit value, and he's going to kill the glass against Portland. So he would be my guy right now without looking at roster construction. I think he's the best value for sure.
And it's interesting, though. He's now played 3 consecutive games without taking a free throw. The one game he had double-digit free throws this year came against Portland. Now, he doesn't make a whole lot, but at least getting on the line is some free opportunities. And, he didn't have a great fantasy day, that opener, but I also know he's kind of dealing with some injuries with his thumb or whatnot. But 6,700 is so cheap there. I'll definitely be having some exposure. But that's going to wrap us up, fellas. Before we get out of here, I want to thank our friends over at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans, proudly supporting the Roto-Grinders Daily Fantasy Fix podcast. So Rocket Mortgage, bringing that mortgage approval process to the 21st century. Fast, it's powerful, and it's completely online. Rocket Mortgage taking all the complicated, time-consuming parts of applying for a mortgage out of the equation. So if you hate searching through stacks of old files and paperwork, with Rocket Mortgage, you can easily share your bank statements and pay stubs at a touch of a button, helping you get approved in minutes for a custom mortgage solution tailored to your unique financial situation. Even better with Rocket Mortgage, you can do it all on your phone or tablet. It's a quick online process that you can manage from the convenience of your couch. So if you're looking to refinance your mortgage or buy a home, check out Rocket Mortgage today. QuickenLoans.com/Roto. QuickenLoans.com/Roto. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. And MLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030. Hoop and T.
To speak on our sponsor, I can definitely attest to that. I just purchased a new home, and I went through that process with Quicken Loans. It was amazing, seamless. I highly recommend doing it.
Whoa, look at that. Testimonial.
Yeah, it really was. I was super impressed. Honestly, I can say I was super impressed. I know the process can be really crappy and suck, but I went through Quicken Loans and went with that the Rocket Mortgage, and it was truly amazing.
Especially for you, who especially I know T kind of had this problem too when he was getting his mortgage on his house. When your job is daily fantasy player, they're like, what do you mean? What is this?
Yeah, they don't exactly like to see that on the old application portfolio.
But again, thank you guys so much for listening to the show here today. We'll be back again on Friday with Tony and Hoop. I'll be bringing the show tomorrow. We'll get into a little bit of NFL. Believe it or not, NFL starting up next week. All you need to know for NFL boys, just play David Johnson. Just play him. Till tomorrow, have yourself a great Wednesday night. Good luck in all your DFS games, and we will see ya.